Welcome to Ergonomics 101. My name is Brett Weiss. I work at a place called Bodyco in Toronto and also CEO of ErgoSesh. We are a company that is very focused on helping people work healthier wherever they work and taking the ergonomics world and making it a little more active and involving the person as the one that's actually creating the changes. So it's a little bit about me. Kind of went through that. I am a certified ergonomic assessment specialist. I have a doctorate in physical therapy, currently practicing at Bodyco Toronto. So what we've seen in the past few years is this awesome shift to wellness. We see it in people's daily lives, right? So we see it in kind of people taking up yoga, people taking up exercise, eating healthier, making healthier choices. We see all these shifts, right? And the only thing is that we haven't seen this huge shift in the workplace yet. Slowly, companies are starting to invest more and do more, but I haven't seen it in people taking that initiative like they do in their own health and wellness, specifically when it comes to investing their time and their money in their workspaces and in the way that they work, and having plans and systems in place. And so this is how we end up after a little while. This is the 3 p.m. slump. And so, we just don't apply that same mindset when we work. And so I wanted to take you through this little exercise here. I want you to look at this photo and tell me what you see, right? So you can just kind of think about what you see in this photo. When you look at this woman working, does it look like you? Does that remind you of yourself sitting at the counter once COVID hit and you kind of, this is what you're working with now? Does she look comfortable? Does she look like she's in pain? Do you have pain? Do you see your pain in this person? And then I'll tell you what we see. So we look at this person when we get these things all the time from ErgoSesh. We get a snapshot of what a person looks like from the side. And we kind of dissect this and we look, and this is what we see. And so if that doesn't make you think, then I don't know what will. We basically look at this and we see, monitors too low, too small, keyboard too high. All these things are going to go through our minds, and then we want to adjust those things, but also figure out what's most important to this person to make the biggest impact as fast as possible. And so we know that these types of things will kind of lead to these types of things in the clinic. And the whole point of doing these ergonomic assessments is really just to kind of ultimately get less patients in the clinic. Theoretically, it's not a great business model, but basically you try to get to people before they get to you. And so we know that a lot of these things on the left bring on these things on the right that we end up treating long after they started. So we're going to talk about that big elephant in the room, and that is pain. How many of you have had pain in the last 6 months, last 6 weeks even? You may be asking yourself, why do I have pain? And you may be thinking very long and hard about this. So let's just take the back. And this can apply to the neck too, but let's take the back. Here's some interesting studies that show you the disc pressure on your low back. When you sit in a chair and you sit rounded out, that disc pressure just goes through the roof. This causes a lot of disc type injuries, low back pain. You look at this guy on the left, he's standing, and that is 100% loading on the disc. Okay, and so if we take 100% of what someone's standing and how much loading is coming through that disc in your low back, when you sit down in a chair and you go over to this guy at 100 degrees, let's say right here, the second one, this is actually where we do want you sitting, about 100 degrees if you're gonna sit. And so not 90, not upright, and certainly not 80. When you start hunching forward and you start going forward, you may know that that's bad for you, but maybe you don't know it's bad for you because the actual disc pressure is one huge component. Now there are many other muscles that tighten up because of that position. And I know that in the clinic, we see like the first thing people say is, oh, my hip flexors are tight, my butt's tight, like all the muscles. There's a lot of focus on muscles. And not too many people talk about this. And it's just because I just don't think that they ever got that education until you have a disc injury, right? And so that's what this day is all about here. It's really mostly about having conversations with you all now that we would probably end up having in the clinic if you had an injury, and trying to get ahead, out front of it. Let's talk about text neck. This is a huge one for all of you people on Instagram, for all you people that create content for different things. Staring at that phone all day long, your head weighs about 15 pounds. Okay. Now, when it moves forward, you can see this guy, it just gets heavier and heavier and heavier because the physics change as the head moves forward away from the support of your spine, right? So it gets to 60 pounds when it's at the bottom. Now, I like to tell people, like, you think about this as like a bowling ball, right? You have a bowling ball on a table and you have these muscles, and they're really just designed to kind of turn the ball, bend the ball a little bit, maybe support it a tiny bit, but really just rotate it on a table, right? Just spinning that bowling ball, that 15-pound bowling ball. Well, now you've taken the bowling ball and you've hung it over the table. And so now this 15-pound ball is now suspended from the table by the very muscles that are meant to just rotate it. If you were those muscles, wouldn't you be pissed off at the end of the day too? And so that's why, a big component to why people always have this tightness, and they think it's just normal. And unfortunately, it is normal, but it doesn't have to be that way. Simply just getting the head back over the body makes a huge difference. Now, we have some things to help you do that. So we call them posture resets. I have always found it is much harder to change an old habit than it is to just create a new healthy one. And so we're going to show you some tricks and tips. Now, I posted one on this morning, if you saw, but I call this the magnet technique. And basically what I want you to do is take your phone, and as you bring the phone, instead of having your head down to the phone, you're going to bring the phone up to the level of your eyes. Now, when the light goes on the phone, when the actual screen turns on, I want you to think that the phone and your nose have opposing magnets. And so what you're going to be doing is coming up and retracting away. Now, if retraction is a new exercise for you guys, then there may be a lot of tightness in the back of the neck. So you may not want to push too far back. But the key here is just don't be too far forward. If you have any trouble figuring this out, go forward. That should be easy for you, and then reverse it. That's a good trick. Here's another one. The overhead reach. It's just a good way to get your spine extended. First, you'll overextend your spine. You kind of lift your hands up. You get really tall. And then you just drop your arms down and you just keep that height that you got. Another posture reset is good for the shoulders and for the mid-back. For anyone with mid-back pain, not low back pain, mid-back pain tends to round out. We find typing on keyboards, we'll talk about later the keyboards, depending on the type of keyboard you're using, it may draw you in more. Depending on the spacebar placement and everything, if your thumbs are really close together, your shoulders will be rotated internally also, and your mid-back will round out. And then it's just a matter of time before your center of mass shifts forward, your head goes over the thing, and you're in that lumbar position we talked about at 190% compression on the spine. So all these pieces that we're showing you, all these pieces, they kind of all add up and create this ability to not hold your posture. And I think that the biggest thing is people just blame themselves for having bad posture, but the space you're in is pulling you into bad posture. So you're actually doing very well at what you're set up for. This is the whole reason for ergonomics. You set up the space a little bit better, all of a sudden you're just doing really well what you're set up to do really well for. So we're going to go through a little quick checklist, a little checkup. I would love it if you can try to do this along with me. Depends where you are. If you're in your workspace, then great. If not, just think about your workspace and just ask yourself, could I do this? Because do I have the pieces to do this? So number one, we always fit the person to the chair and the chair to the floor. So you want to have your feet flat on the floor with some weight coming through the feet. You want to have your knees at about a 90-degree angle. And so you might have to adjust your chair if it has the ability. You want to have 2 to 3 fingers behind the knee from where the bottom of the chair ends, right? And that's really important. We're going to go into that. A little bit of detail. I kind of highlight that in the next slide to talk about that key component there. We want your low back using the backrest. We want your elbows at 90 degrees on the armrests so they can actually unload the weight of the arm from your neck. We want the shoulders to be relaxed, not raised up. And in terms of the monitor height, we ideally want the monitor to be, when you're in that position, just out of arm's reach. When you reach out like this, just out of arm's reach, and your eye line should be looking about 75% of the way up your screen. Any movement away from those things will start a process of drawing you in one way or another. So how did it measure up? Were you able to do this Do you think that you have all the pieces that you could do this? And if not, could you modify some stuff? If your feet don't reach the floor, but everything else looks really good, could you put some books there? These are the things you want to think of. And there's budget-friendly things for everything. So this was the one thing I wanted to highlight out of that whole checklist. This is a normal sitting position we would love to achieve. If you look at these bones right here, the blue colored bones, those bones are dense. They are under your pelvis. They are built for sitting. They are built for weight bearing. They are built to take the weight of your body. And because of that, they're built to sit your spine in the right position, okay? Across the board, everything I hear about when people talk about their chairs, the first thing they talk about is their lumbar support. I got a lumbar support. I don't have lumbar support. What if I were to tell you lumbar support is like one of the least important things? Now, it's not to say it's not important, but I feel like we have all missed a key component. The depth of the chair and the seat pan is everything. The seat pan will dictate what happens at the low back. And so that's what we're going to kind of go into here. So this is how we should sit. So the person on the left has 2 inches behind the knee. I know it says 4. With 2 inches behind the knee, it creates a short seat pan. With a short seat pan, you'll look at the force of this line coming down, and it's going to kind of hit one spot, right? And so if you go back to that picture before where you had those 2 spots, this person's trying to sit in that right spot, but all her weight's coming down on one spot. So it's a lot of force in one area. You look at my phone, it's kind of like this. If I put all my weight down here, then I'm not really giving myself much surface area to distribute that weight. And so the person on the right, what we like about that is that more contact area of the thigh takes up the chair so that you have those 2 dense bones to sit on, but also the weight gets distributed through the following places, up to the knee. And so just to finalize that, the left photo, 2 inches behind the knee, are very short seat, and the right one, very long. And often that just basically leads to this. So sacral sitting also. People will basically slide out, the pelvis will rotate down, they'll be sitting on their tailbone, which is where all those nerves come out. And if you sit on those nerves that come out of your sacrum, those little triangle at the end of your spine, if you sit on those nerves for long enough, they will kind of get a little numbing. And then also what happens is the back gets flexed out. So if you look at this guy's lumbar spine, all the lumbar support in the world isn't gonna correct that if you're already not set up from the foundation, right? So this is a really important thing. If you're sitting on a wood chair and you're sitting for a while and you get up and your butt is like itchy and tingly, then you've probably been sitting sacral sitting, and you've probably been sitting on those nerve roots, and they're just not happy. Now, there's been some interesting studies in the past year with COVID. They looked at the shift to remote working, and the numbers are astonishing. I mean, they're understandable, but from a rehabilitation perspective, this is going to create a ton of patients in the next year and a half for sure. 73% of people have no lumbar support that they polled. 63% of workers are sitting on a chair with a hard surface, kind of like what we were just talking about. 41% are too low, 47% have no armrests at all. And so you're starting to look at this and see a trend. And so we want to see if we can get ahead of this before that happens. So we need to rethink our approach to this whole thing. How many hours do you sleep in a bed? Average, 6 to 8 hours, right? And then how many hours do you sit in a chair working? Let's say it's your dining room chair, whatever you're doing now, right? 6 to 8 hours is the average. How much did you spend on each of these things? Now, if the answer isn't even or even close, then there's a problem here, right? Actually, in the left side here, on the sleeping side, we're not even loading our spine. So worst case scenario, you'll be tight. Maybe you'll have a little bit of a neck pain because maybe you're in a weird position. But overall, you're not really loading those discs like we talked about in the sitting position, right? So you're at way higher risk when you're sitting than sleeping. But yet, we've just been trained that the sleep is so important that we've got to spend the money on the sleeping. So we're trying to get people to understand this balance a little better. Start putting a budget in your mind about a chair if you really do sit for a long period of time, and start looking at it as $200 is not expensive. It just can't be. It's certain chairs. For people that have no budget, the solution is just pure movement, getting up, moving around, right? We need a better system in general. We sit again, 6 to 8 hours at work, right? We drive a car less than an hour a day on average. What do you do when you get in a car? The first thing you do, sit down, adjust your seat, right? Check your mirrors, make sure your seatbelt's on. You go through this checklist that it's been ingrained in your head since the day you got your license, right? You go through all these things because the danger is apparent. It's right in your face. It is death. It is here, right? You could injure yourself or someone else. The danger is not 6 months down the line, 5 years down the line. It's right now. Picture on the left is the 5 years down the line, the 10 years down the line, right? You don't really value it yet because you don't see it coming, right? It's not till after it hurts where you start to realize, all right, it's time to do something. So we need a system. When you sit down, there should be a system. Okay, are my feet good? Awesome. Knees, 3 fingers behind the back of the knee. Awesome. Elbows, 90. Armrest, if they slide in, bring them in, right? My back. So you just got a little checklist going. And the more you do that, the faster it happens and the more automatic it becomes. So let's talk about the tools now. What to do to build your actual office, right? Like what products are good? What am I looking for? Now, the goal of this going forward is to just make you a more educated consumer of ergonomic products, because there are some really awesome websites out there that are flashy and the marketing is incredible. And those sites look beautiful and they will promise you the world in a chair. And they will back it for like 2 years, which tells you pretty much everything. So I'm going to go through a couple of things you should be looking for. What are the key components to like a really true ergonomic chair? Some other mobile working things we're going to run through. So let's talk about chairs. Here's the 6 key features that I think are most important. Number 1, adjustable height. You need to be able to get your feet on the floor. That's number 1, right? Adjustable seat depth. We talked about the depth of the seat in terms of you want it to be, again, 3 to 4 inches would be great. 3 to 4 fingers behind the back of the knee is where your feet are on the ground, and then you feel that, and then that's where the depth of the chair should be. Adjustable seat angle. So the actual angle of the backrest to be able to get back to that 110 degree or 100 degrees of recline, right? So 10 degrees from 90 would be ideal when you're working. Okay, so 10 degrees back from 90. Adjustable lumbar support is a great feature because everyone's torso is different. So it'd be nice if once you set up your seat, you could adjust the backrest that it can go up and down and meet your lumbar curve where it is naturally. Now, one thing about lumbar support I didn't say before, think of it as lumbar support, but not lumbar like overpressure. So it's really just meant to just kind of fill in the space that's naturally there wherever your spine is, as opposed to creating your lumbar curve. And that's where like the seat pan conversation comes in. Fully adjustable armrests, by far my favorite part of a good ergonomic chair. You want to find, and I will show you mine just so you have a good reference, but like you want to find armrests that slide in and out. That's a good feature because if they come in, then you can have your arms here while you work, okay? Otherwise, most chairs are built for the average person, and the average person is a certain width pelvis, right? And so if the beams are out here, but your elbows are here, then you will have to be doing this all day to sit in the chair, right? So a good chair will have, the beams will be here. They can adjust too sometimes, but if nothing else, you will at least be able to slide in here. Now, they should go up and down. They can spin, which is the different, some chairs have a different depth. The most important feature is that they slide in. And I think that you can get that in a lot of chairs, but just look for that sliding in, not just tilting, okay? Quality seat cushion. This is where you're gonna get the difference between a $1,000 chair and a $200 chair, right? The quality materials that they put in, every company has to make a profit on their products, right? So in order for them to do that, this is a lot of times where they pull back. And this is the type of question you have to ask yourself. How long am I using this seat? If it's for COVID, if it's a year, if it's 2 years, maybe, then I can go like 400, 300, that price bracket. If I need something for 10 years, then you'll probably end up buying 2 or 3 of those before you even get to the price. So, so the key here is really invest in quality chairs if you're serious about what you're doing. think of your work as a musician would think of their instrument, right? You spend equal amount of time at this desk. You deserve better. You deserve a good chair. It's a good investment to make. Any quality chair will give you a warranty at least 10 years, 12 years. They'll back it. A sit-stand desk. You get this question all the time. Phenomenal. The ability to stand up provides you the break in your back. Now, one thing I like to usually educate my patients on is your body is pretty resilient and your body can tolerate a decent amount of torture. It just can't tolerate the same torture in the same exact spot every single day without a break, right? So you have to give your body that movement, not because movement is amazing, and it is, but not because of that only, but because you need to give your body a time to heal itself. And it will heal most of the time. It just needs that breather, right? So the cold hard truth is I just tell people all the time is if you're you got to work, right? So try to stay moving. But even when you are sitting down for a while, if you can shift things around every few weeks and displace the torture you put your body through, it's not ideal, but it's better than the same exact spot every single day. And a sit-stand desk allows you the ability to just get up, right? Now, when you buy a sit-stand desk, same thing goes with a chair. You can find cheap, you can find quality, you can find somewhere in the middle. 5 years or more warranty on a motor is what you should look for, because a lot of companies will tell you that there's a 10-year warranty, but if you look at the fine print, it's 10-year warranty on the wood top, not the motor. And the wood top's probably not going to break. So just a little fact that you should kind of look for there, which I think will help you when you're actually searching for your products. Position memory settings, really cool add-on feature. If you're going to get a sit-stand desk, get the memory settings. You can save like $100 by just using the up and down switch. But in our experience, the more barriers that you have to creating that space setup that's set up right, the more barriers you have in the moment, the less likely you are to actually do it, right? So the idea that you can just hit number 2, and I'll show you with mine, you hit number 2, the desk rises, right? And then you know that when you get there, it's ready and you're in the right position to start working. So I think this is a great investment for people, a sit-stand desk, and they can make them in all sizes and you can move them around. We actually do with ErgoSesh, we do a small version for our Manhattan friends that have tiny spaces. We will put a 2-foot wide or 30-inch wide desk on wheels, like a nursing cart, so that you can kind of roll it into your bathroom, your closet when people are over, and you can roll it out with your chair when you're ready to work in the living room or the kitchen. And so it gives you a little bit more mobility and a little more options. And it doesn't have to be like such an eyesore in the room, right? Because a lot of times we sacrifice ergonomics for aesthetics. And I think that if you have that idea of you can just roll it away, we think that solves that problem at least, and we can get that barrier for people. Don't get a sit-stand desk without a monitor arm. When you sit down, your head is a certain amount of inches away from the seat surface. When you stand up, your head is a certain amount of inches from the floor. Your leg length and your torso length may be different. And so the ability to just grab this thing and move it around when you stand to again, hit all those points we talked about before is really helpful. When you get one, get a gas spring mechanism. So if you're searching Amazon, you're searching all your stuff, do your due diligence, but look for one that has a gas spring mechanism, and that will allow you to just grab it and move it. You won't have to like unscrew bolts. Again, the more barriers, the more stuff, the more things you have to do to adjust it in the moment, the less likely you are to do it. And then you've just spent all that money and you're not even using it, right? So these are really, I think, things that you want to think about when you look at monitors and monitor arms. They make dual monitor arms. I don't have a photo here of it. They make triple. They make monitor arms with a laptop holder. So you can really, you can, this might sound bad, but you can have some fun with it. This is your space. This is your workspace. You should own that space like you own everything else that you value, right? Always check the weight capacity for the monitor arm to make sure that the monitor fits on it. Here are our recommendations for external keyboards and mouse. So I absolutely, and we do not get paid by them at all, I absolutely love Kinesis keyboards. I have 2. They have the ability to split or stay together, or tent. And so you have these tenting options. And what that does is it allows your hands to rest in a more neutral position. So anyone with carpal tunnel, anyone with elbow pain or tennis elbow, stuff like that, all those arm, elbow injuries, they can help a lot with this. Now, to go back to that thing I was saying before about how a keyboard can affect your posture, if you're at your keyboard, I want you to do this. Sit there and put both fingers, even if it's a laptop, put both fingers on the space bar right next to each other and act as if you're going to type. And what you'll notice is they are very close together, right? And so your arm angle is pointing inward, right? So your shoulders are internally rotated. When your shoulders internally rotate for a long period of time, eventually you will round out your back and your head will go forward. And it will start this cascade of events that draws you into the computer. A split keyboard allows you to split it up so that your arms are here. And that is huge. I think it's a huge, huge thing. This is one of the things I recommend to people like right away. And the added bonus is if you get the Bluetooth ones like this one, you can pop it in your suitcase or whatever. And like if you're mobile, then you can take it to go and you can use it with your laptop. They do make other things. Ergonomic mouse. If you've got progressed carpal tunnel, it's been there for a long time, and you have like a history of hand and wrist injuries, an ergonomic roller mouse, which is that large thing you're seeing over there, they're pretty expensive, but they sit in front of the keyboard so that you can use both thumbs. And that whole entire bar that you see, that's a cylinder on top of, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but right around here, this bar actually rolls up and down and slides left and right. And so that's how you would actually click, and then you have your buttons there. It allows everything to stay center. I usually recommend a semi-vertical mouse. If you're going to go for a mouse, something like this. They make regular mouse, right? They make trackpads, not great, but if you have to use it, then you have to use it. A standard mouse, which is going to be pronated, it's called, where your hand is in this position. Again, don't love that position for the hand for long periods of time. So a semi-vertical mouse just brings you more neutral position. They do make vertical mice, and the research behind it is not amazing. It's growing a little, but it's not amazing. And I think what the key reason is, it solves one problem. It gets you out of this position. But those vertical mice, they're like this. As you click, number one, you will literally slide it across the table, right? Because your forces are pushing it this way. So that makes it annoying. So what people end up doing is they just grip it tighter so that they don't move. And now you're just overworking these muscles to grip all day instead of just lightly clicking. So I like the semi-vertical. I think it's the nice marriage between the two. And the last part of this slide, you'll notice that the keyboard has no number tray, no number pad. They make a separate one that goes to the side, or you could put it in the center if you really need it, if you're an accountant or if you're putting a ton of data entry in. But if you don't use that number pad, look where your mouse is and look where your center is. And you'll notice that the number pad is literally where your mouse should be. And so it is housing really valuable real estate, okay? And so if you don't use it there, then you don't need it there. And what I would challenge you to do is look at your space, and we call it a power zone. Look literally the space here to here, right in front of you on your desk. And if that space is not clear, it should be. And you want to think, whatever's in that space, whatever's closest to me, whatever I hit with the highest frequency, whatever I do the most should be in that space. So you're not reaching and turning and twisting and holding, okay? So moving on, last piece of the puzzle here is the balance boards and fatigue mats. Now, if you're gonna stand and you have a standing desk, you may solve one problem, create another, right? So your back feels better because you stood up, but maybe now you get plantar fasciitis because you've been standing all day long and you aren't used to that, right? So one way to offset that is to just sit and stand. And by the way, 3-to-1 ratio. So 3 hours for sitting, every hour of standing is a good way to start. And then you can work your way towards 50-50, but general recommendations, 3 hours to an hour of sitting. So you get to sit a little more than you think. When you're standing, a balance board like the one on the left, which is expensive, but it's a cool, fun toy, and the one on the right provide you just enough offset of your balance to shift your weight throughout the day, right? So the whole point of these fatigue masks, it's not that it reduces pain because of it's not making you lighter, but what it's doing is it's literally, if this is like your center, and like it's moving your center of mass throughout the day into different places because you're a tiny bit off balance. You're also working some of the muscles in your feet, but basically it's just loading up different areas of your feet, and thus your pelvis and your spine and your neck, like different areas are getting the load. And so it's like we said before, it's sharing the load and distributing the torture that you put yourself through. So the one on the left here, really good, but I wouldn't go any more challenging than that. I've seen a lot of people get balance boards that are built for balance training, like in the physical therapy clinics. That will literally just make you fall down, and you will not be as efficient at work if you are on the floor. For people that are just on the go, like always on the go, they don't have any intention in creating a workspace because they work from coffee shops. In a normal world, they work from coffee shops. Even now, maybe they're just never at their desk. They're always somewhere else. And so we need to figure out what solutions we can give these people. We can't just say, go work at a desk. It's not going to happen. It's not realistic. With ErgoSesh, everything we're doing is all about what's real, like what's actually happening. I mean, it's great if everyone could be a robot, but it doesn't happen. So it's all about figuring out what that person needs. And so if you're this person, then you will love getting a foldable split keyboard, which is, you can find these on Amazon. But basically same idea as a split keyboard. It's not quite split as much, but for mobile, you fold that thing in half. It's the size of like your wallet. It's Bluetooth. And now all of a sudden you've got a laptop riser that fits in your bag, and you've got a keyboard and a mouse, and you're good to go. They do make keyboards that are not split, but they do have foldable keyboards with a little extra trackpad on the side. If you don't use the trackpad a ton, but you just don't want to carry a mouse, that's also a good solution. I love this laptop riser on the right. It has the ability, and there's many like it, but it has the ability to rise to the point where it's your monitor when you're sitting, but also even high enough to go when you're standing. And it folds down super thin. So it's really a great solution for people that use a laptop and want to make a laptop a monitor. And that is basically how you would do it. You get a keyboard and a mouse, you plug in, and your laptop is no longer your laptop, it's just your monitor. The inflatable footrest I put on here because these types of people are probably, when we get back to our normal world, we will be on flights, and we'll be going and staying in bars, or staying in hotels where they have a bar, and you may be using your laptop from like a high top table, right? So these inflatable footrests, if you put them sideways, you use them when you're in a chair. If you put them vertical, you may be able to use them to support your feet when you're on a high top chair, so that, again, we talked about like the force coming down on distributed versus just on one spot. If you're on a high top chair, those seats are really narrow. Like you're not going to get deep in that chair. So much of your legs are going to be hanging off, which means all that force is coming through your butt. And so if you can get some of that force onto a footrest, it will make a world of difference. If they have a beam at the airport, if they have a bar for your feet and you reach it, then that might help. But usually they're a little low. The back joy, if you have a history of back pain and you aren't able to invest in and I really mean invest in a quality chair, like $1,000, invest in like a chair that is going to support you. And if you're overweight, and if you have like just a lot of loading coming through that back, Backjoy is really good. They make a ton of products. You can check out their site. What it does is it takes that pelvis and it ensures that you sit in that rotated position, like upright. And so you don't do that sacral, that dumping backward of the pelvis that we talked about, where you sit on the tailbone. So it won't really let you do that. And if you do, it's like, it feels very awkward. So very brilliant. I think it's a great tool. I think the first time I saw it was at a PT conference like years back. It still holds up. I still think you need a little lumbar support with it when but you can take your shirt, your coat, and chuck it behind you in a chair if you need to take this thing with you on the go. So, that's pretty much everything. The end all be all of everything is that ergonomics really occurs when a custom fit ergonomic furniture is paired with informed and empowered people, right? It's one thing to have tools. It's another thing to know how to use those tools. And so you really need both. And so what we're trying to do with ErgoSession, with this process, is, meet these people one by one and learn more about them, learn about whatever aches, pains they already have, learn what their space is like, help them create this new space and guide them in the right way so that they can learn a new skill. And that skill of being able to set up a space that they can take with them any job they go, anywhere they go, or anywhere they work. And that is what this whole thing is about. And I really think that that is how you make the biggest, longest impact in a person's life. You give them a skill versus a product. So thank you for joining us. We have some time for questions, but you can follow us, Body Co Toronto. She's posting awesome content all the time. Ergo Sesh, totally biased opinion, posting awesome content. And I want to take some questions. So I'm going to stop sharing here and I'm going to come over to the chat. Let's see. We got one in the Q&A. I always wondered what makes a good seat. The gaming chairs look really comfortable and cool, but so do the ball chairs. Okay, we get this question a lot. Gaming chairs and balls to sit on. Not great. Okay, so the ball, let's start with that. I love the intention, right? You're doing it because you want to be active and whatever. So the problem with the ball chair, and they've done studies on this, they see that when they put people on these balls, they hold this amazing posture on the ball for like the first 5 minutes on average, if that, right? And then after that, what happens is if you picture a ball, I will use a football for now, but if you picture a ball and you're sitting on a ball, right? And so this is you sitting on a ball. Now, after a while, your butt starts to get tired, you start to get tired, and you start to roll this way, right? So you basically start to roll like that, and then the ball will roll away too. So what ends up happening is your pelvis goes under you, like in a chair, like we talked about by putting the weight on the wrong spot of your butt. But then on top of that, the ball ends up rolling out of you too. And so you're getting compression from the bottom and your head goes forward a little bit too as you're rounding and you get compression from the top. So you end up getting squeezed both ends of the spine. Most people do not have the core strength to sit on a ball all day long with perfect posture. If you do, you probably aren't even attending this webinar. So gaming chairs, the issue with gaming chairs is, number one, they're built with horrible quality. They don't have any padding usually. They don't have a ton of adjustable features. And they have this insane feature of, they look like racing seats, right? Now, what I would ask you is like, when you're gaming, even gaming, right? Like how often are you actually taking like banking turns, like in a race car around a track? That's why they built those seats that way, so that when you shift your gears and when you cut that the turn, you don't fly out of the seat. But when you're working and you're not doing that, right? So whatever's happening is you end up shortening making the seat less wide, and so your thighs end up pressing up against it for no reason. It also doesn't have. They're not built with great like features. They don't have adjustable armrests that go in and out usually. The quality of the support of the actual foam under you is nothing virtually. They're just, it's mostly a gimmick. So we don't love those. Let's see, we got a lot of questions. What about shoulder pain and pain that shoots down towards the spine from your shoulder? Okay, well, I mean, that question might be a little bit more appropriate in a setting of like in the clinic, because you want to figure out, number one, is it the shoulder causing your pain? Is it the neck causing your pain? Is it a muscle? Is it a joint? Is it a nerve? It sounds like it's nerve impingement, but it could just be a muscle strain. So this sounds a little more like a physical therapy question, but I will maybe try to answer that from a perspective of ergonomics. So towards your spine from your shoulder. Yeah. So I think maybe the first thing you want to think of is the keyboard. So maybe the first thing you want to think of is maybe you're in this position and you're really stressing out the spine and the scapula, shoulder blades back there, and they're just getting overstretched and overworked and compressed maybe. So the keyboard position, maybe the split keyboard, that might end up being a really good position for you, because again, anything to get your shoulders out of this internally rotated position, there's a lot of muscles in here. One of them specifically tightens up. You can get some pinching. There are conditions like thoracic outlet, for instance, that would cause impingement. That's more down the arm. So you can get a lot of stuff. So this question, it could be the rib, it could be the neck, it could be the shoulder. We would probably want to tease that out with it, like a real evaluation. So I would highly encourage you to come in if you're here, or teletherapy. If you can afford to only invest in one item, what would you recommend as most? That's a great question. It really depends on the person, right? And that is literally what Ergo Session is all about. We have a conversation, we figure out what is hurting, and then the recommendation is for that. And then we tell you what would be best if you do for everything. But at this moment, what do you need? So if it's your back, maybe the chair is the investment. If it's your mid back and you don't have a huge budget, I would think the split keyboard may make the biggest impact. I love the split keyboard because I think it slows down a cascade of events that cause you to pull in. I think that the internal rotation of the shoulders for a while leads you to come in, and that coming in takes your center of mass and moves it forward. And then from that point on, you're just falling onto the desk. So I think getting a split keyboard is a really good start for people because you can use it in any space later. You won't buy one now and not use it later. So I think it's a good start. And then I think the other thing would be with the split keyboard, with the mid back we talked about, I would think that the armrests that slide in and out are really important to support the elbow so that you can actually put the elbows down and have the keyboard there. Otherwise, you'll be like this. For distance to the screen, I think it depends on the size of the screen. Yeah, so distance of screen depends on the size of the screen. And so the general recommendation is 20 inches from the screen. However, depending on the size of the screen as well as the type of screen. So if you use a LCD screen, for instance, then 20 inches is the general recommendation for the average computer screen, which is like a 20s to 30s, right? If you're using a 50-inch LCD TV in front of your face, then there's a whole nother problem. You need to go to a 4K TV, which you won't have to sit so far from. So the higher the resolution, the less distance you really need in terms of affecting your eyes. So for that question, yeah, I think that's probably the best way to think of it. So if you need a big screen or multiple screens, you may want to go with 4K, upgrade your screen so that you can have a larger screen and you won't actually feel that difference. The opinion on saddle stools and rolling or not fixed seat stools. Yeah, these are good options if you want to vary up your movement. But I just think that as the only option is not sustainable. I think at the end of the day, people need to be supported when they sit in all different ways. The saddle stools are great because they focus on your low back pain. That's why they make them, right? To reduce low back pain. But the problem with that is there's no armrest. So now you're going to have neck pain because your elbows are being held up all day long, right? So these are products that are created to solve a problem, right? Because the amount of people that have low back pain is so big, right? That you can make one product and make millions on it because a lot of people have low back pain. So if you tell them it's going to fix their low back pain, that's great. But you don't tell them that maybe they're going to develop neck injury down the line because now they've been holding up their neck the whole time, their arms, right? So I think, to have those things, they're fine. I think in an office setting, it's awesome. You have my ideal situation for a work setup would be if I could design like a big company's whole setup, I would literally have different stations to set up for different types of movement, right? So you'd have a stool section like that, and you'd have a ball section to do maybe just a 2-minute video, and then they kick you out. Most people can't sit longer than that, but and then you have a setting where you sit on the ground with a cushion. So having different the space I think would be really nice if you could set up a place so that the entire architecture is built to sustain movement better. But that's pipe dreams. Are you paying attention, Emily? My wife's an interior designer. Do you have ergonomic steps for corporate? Yeah, so for corporate environments, we do. Yeah, so we do ergo steps for corporate environments. We do for large, middle, and small companies. For large companies, we do it in a basis of trying to kind of group people into certain categories of where they work. And then from there, we do these semi-customized assessments. But for middle and small size companies, we do the full ergo session experience where it's report, and we take them through this whole process. And then we can actually provide furniture. We have a wholesale agreement with Ergocentric. My chairs, they're I love their products. That's not what today's about, but we do have the ability to get these awesome chairs at prices that you wouldn't be able to get unless you work for a big company. So that's why we did it, because we really want to be able to just get good stuff into people's houses. It's one thing to say, get a good chair. It's another thing to help someone kind of get there. In terms of ways to invest, so do you have tips for how to modify your existing workspace if we aren't able to invest in all these items, i.e. books? Okay, so yes, we usually talk to people and we kind of like get an idea what their budget is. And that's really important because there's suggestions for everything. No budget, little budget, big budget, no budget. No budget ends up sometimes being regular budget, but we'll see. If you're working on a laptop, yeah, we want that 75% of the way up the screen. So you take some books and you pack them up and then you put it back and then you push the laptop back so it's just out of arm's reach when you're sitting in your chair, right? So that's monitor height and distance. And if you know these little things like distance is just out of arm's reach, 75% of the way up the screen, you can then apply that wherever you go, right? And that's why I think the focus should be on learning that versus what product or how many books, right? Which is a more passive system. And I think it's more active when you think, okay, I already know I got to be just out of arm's reach. Okay, great. I know that it's 75% of the way up screen. Now you can kind of mock it up and figure out that situation for where you are, and you have a skill set, right? You can use this books for a footrest too. One thing I would say is that standard tables, the biggest thing we see is people working from their kitchen counters or their kitchen tables, right? Or kitchen tables and desks, like writing tables, for instance, they're typically built at 29 inches or 30 inches off the ground. You should measure your desk and see, but they're usually 29 to 30 inches. A keyboard tray is significantly lower than that, right? And a sit-stand desk, when it's set up the right way, is significantly lower than that. It's like 24 inches, 25 inches, something like that. And that's because your elbows are down here, right? And when you're eating, you could be up here because you're not holding your arms up here all the time. But tables are not built as keyboard trays, so they're too high. So you need to be able to get your chair up, and so you need to raise the floor up. Now, the one barrier you're going to face, which is the most common thing we see, and it's very hard to get around it. If you have a desk that has a bar in front of it where your legs go, if you can take that off, then amazing. If you can't, you may want to consider working from another desk, because if you have a bar there, you'll most likely never be able to get the chair up high enough and get your legs under the desk without hitting your legs into that bar or drawer. So don't go for desks with drawers where your legs go. Put them off to the side. Let's see what other questions we got. If I'm already having mid-back pain in the spine area and I am using a good chair and have an adjustable desk, in the interim, what can I do to alleviate this tightness and pain? Okay, so I'll answer that from two standpoints. I will definitely say you need to get evaluated because you need to figure out why you have spine pain. Central spine pain could be from that segment, could be referred from the lower cervical spine. So you want to just get a clear understanding, and that will definitely dictate what to do and whether or not it's effective, right? So any intervention is only as effective as an accurate diagnosis. Otherwise, you're just it's called a shotgun approach, just throwing everything at it, and you're just not going to ever know, right? But I will tell you that the first things you can do would be that reset, which is like the hands coming open like this. That opens up your chest and that extends the mid back a little bit, and then bring your hands back and keep the chest where it is every once in a while. A split keyboard is a good option. Again, it allows you to be in a position that doesn't draw you in and forward. So again, the more things you can do without thinking, you set up that space. And then potentially retractions, but retractions can be really hard. And sometimes people have like a disc herniation or bulge or something that actually pinches on a nerve and can shoot pain down. And if you do have that, it may be a great exercise, but it also may freak you out because you may not be doing it right and you may not be ready for that. And it may be the right thing to do down the line, but maybe it might seem wrong. And now you're looking at it all off. So I really would highly advise, go to an orthopedist, go to a physical therapist, get an accurate diagnosis, and then let them guide you from there. But I think in terms of products, it sounds like you're good with the chair and the desk, but the split keyboard is an awesome option. I think these are like $100. It's totally worth it. You start with it together because over time you get used to it. You'll make a lot of errors if you just start like this, but it takes like a week or two and then you're fine. I work from a laptop and a second monitor. What's the best way to set that up? That's going to be dependent on the type of work you do, as well as the amount of frequency that you're on that thing. So if you have one monitor, let's say you have a big monitor, let's say they're both the same size. If they're both the same size and you use them 50-50, then you want them split like this. So you want one monitor here, and they're tilting towards you just a tiny bit, so that the light reflects off of it, not back into your eyes. If you use them like 80-20, then you want the one that you use 80% of your time directly in front of you at the distance we talked about, and the other one off to the side. Now, what I usually tell people is, if you have right-sided neck pain, don't put it on the right. Don't, because you clearly have spent your whole life to the right. So every month, move it to the other side. And so now you beat down the left side for a month. So it's angry. So now you're on the right. This one gets a break. So it just, again, distribute the torture and do things when you're not at the desk to try to kind of improve everything from there. Exercises and hot cold compresses. Yeah, I mean, I would say that's more of a physical therapy question. I mean, the exercises, of course, we went through a couple. Hot and cold compresses, the research behind heat and ice is horrible. And so that's a whole debate. So I'm not going to go in there, but if it won't hurt, then whatever. If it's an acute injury, I wouldn't put hot on. If it's a chronic injury, hot or cold, just do whatever feels best. In terms of exercises, yeah, that kind of goes back to like, you need to just get an accurate diagnosis. What is your feeling on chiropractic and massage? They're great. I think everything has a place. I think any practitioner that you're working with that has an accurate diagnosis and a system, you just want to find someone that has a system. You want to show up and like see this person working through a system of their own that they do, and see the gears turning as they talk and as they listen and ask, and as they ask you. I think 90% of the evaluation is the talking, right? I will spend almost half of a session, I'll probably spend a half hour just talking to the person. And I probably will get 99% of the time, like the diagnosis before I even touch the person. And then the tests and everything is just confirming what I already think I know, right? So just make sure whatever place you go, there is a thought process involved. And that, honestly, most importantly to me, they are involving you in the process, because at the end of the day, you will keep this body and they will move on. And I always say to my patients that I care a ton about them, but if they don't care more, then there's a problem. Massage is awesome in used, and I think it's great in tandem with chiropractic or physical therapy. But I have had patients where we're working together, and can I do manipulation? Yes. Am I as good as the chiropractor I work with? No. So if I really feel like there's a patient that needs just a little extra adjustment, I will send them down the hall and have them see them maybe and come back to me later. And we'll work on the re-education process and the exercises. So I think these things can work together. And I think if you are working with multiple practitioners, you always want them communicating. Let's take a couple more. Do you need to keep your arms at a certain height for the keyboard? Yeah, it's a good question. So I'll take it back down. So elbows 90 degrees, right? And so the goal here is that when you're at 90 degrees and your elbows are on those elbow rests, I know they call them arm rests, but they're really elbow rests. They should be hitting you like here to here, not there. And they shouldn't be behind you. So when they're on there, that's where you're typing, okay? So 90 degrees. In the wrist position, we didn't talk about, but wrist position, neutral wrist position is just slightly into extension. So just like this, so kind of like that, not down. And those little flips on the back of keyboards, do not use them. All right, pop them down and go flat instead. They started taking them away, but they should. Let's see the next question. If you have space on your desk to push your keyboard for your arms to rest at 90, then do you really need an arm? Oh, absolutely. This is the reason for carpal tunnel many times. This is the reason for a ton of neck strain and forward head posture. If you're using your desk as an armrest, then what position is your spine in? Because I'll show you this. Your body is here. Your elbows should be straight down, right? So your elbow should be right under your shoulder. If it's forward, there's a whole host of things that happen here. for your elbows to be at 90 degrees, your elbows are at your side. So if your elbows are truly here, then how are you going to get close enough to rest unless you're actually resting on your carpal tunnel? So that is a big yellow flag question. So so yes, you really need armrests on the chair. You can get extensions. They make little extensions that clamp onto your desk. If you really just hate armrests and you want to stand too, then if you want to stand and have armrests, then they clamp onto the end of the desk and they have these little like pads that stick out. That could work. So I hope that answered that question. But yeah, you just don't want you want to put any pressure. This is like the most valuable real estate. You don't want anything pressing on that for long periods of time. That's how the like numbness and tingling happens. What's the name of the chair armrest you recommend? Well, I wouldn't say it's the chair armrest. I would say that, well, these chairs, ergocentric is what we use. We sell. They have different types of armrests, and we like fully adjustable. These are 360 degrees fully adjustable. So these spin in a circle essentially because they're deeper than they are shallower on one side or the other. So depending on the person's width, like from here to here, it will meet you here or here. Like, so if you have a wider back, then the armrest is set out a little bit further. So you don't have to, so you can use it still. These provide as much adjustability as you can. I think the key to everything is just the more adjustable features you have, the more tools you have to work with, right? And the more you can learn and learn how to use that. How often you recommend getting up from your chair? That's a good question. Every 20 minutes. And you might be thinking that's not going to happen, but that's the recommendation. And so just think about that, right? So if that's the recommendation and you're doing 2 hours, then just try to get better. Just like every day, get yourself a little bit better. They have apps, you can set apps, reminders, alarms, whatever. Just try to move closer to that 20-minute mark and you'll notice a difference. If you get a standing desk, that'll fix everything because then you'll be switching it up. Does the depth of your table matter? Yeah, the depth of your table matters a lot for the monitor distance. And if you have a really shallow table, the only way to do that without getting a new one is to install a keyboard tray underneath it so that the keyboard comes out this way. So now the depth is still there, but you're actually back more so that your elbows are on the armrests and you can reach out and the monitor is in the same spot, but you're further back. That would be the solution if you can do it. But again, you can't have that beam there unless you, I guess you could potentially fill in that space and then put a keyboard tray. But if you can't keep your arms at 90 angles, it's okay to have them straight out. The table is 30 inches high, chair is low, but suits my 90-degree knee height. Yeah, the chair is low. So the chair sounds like the chair is at the right height, but the table is really high. This is one of those situations where if you sit a lot, you may want to just get a new table. And you don't need to get an expensive one. You know, you can literally just get one on Staples if you want. I mean, just something that's just this. And if it has adjustable features, like even if it's like one little push buttons to adjust it one time, you know, that'll help. Otherwise, your solution is make it work and work from different places and stand and go to the kitchen and just kind of keep moving. It sounds like you're not staying working from home forever. It sounds like you're going to go back to an office at some point, or you would have probably invested in something. If you're going to be staying from home permanently, you should invest in a sit-stand desk or at least one that cranks. At IKEA, they make them, like, you can get them pretty cheap. So I think that's the solution. It sounds like that desk has a lot of problems. So sorry, I'm not getting it about the bad position from your resting arms on your desk. Can you explain again how the wrists would be the only part getting pressure? So if you're sitting at your desk and you're saying, I just want to make sure I understand this question fully. You're saying that the whole arm is on the table? You might want to just respond yes to that if yes. Yes. Okay. So if the whole arm is on the table, then you're like this, right? I mean, you can't, unless you're like this, you'd have to be so close with your body for your whole arm to be on the table. And then your keyboard is all the way out here, right? So you're like this. And so your back is it must be, I'd have to see it, I guess, if it's something I've never seen before, but I would imagine your back is in a very flexed position and your weight is very far forward. If your weight goes forward, these muscles will be cued on all day to try to pull you backwards. Your body is very smart. Your brain is very smart. It doesn't like being unbalanced and forward. So naturally, it's either going to do one of two things. It's either going to be pulling you all day back, or if it's not, if you're actually just resting like that, then you're loading the tunnel here where the ulnar nerve goes. And so you're loading like the area where the funny bone is, just like the carpal tunnel. This is a valuable space too. And you're compressing that, let alone compressing your shoulders too, and drawing and kind of driving the head of the humerus into the, it's not a great look. I would highly recommend we chat in a session. We're going to be offering a discounted rate for the Ergo Sesh through Bodyco, through insurance, through, normal physiotherapy stuff. And so we're going to have a link. We're going to post a link on here. I think it might be already there. Yeah. If you go scroll up to the top, you'll see a link. You can book an evaluation and we can run through it. And we lowered the price for this because we just wanted to make sure it's like accessible to people. So yeah, I would highly recommend we chat, and if it passes my checklist, then by all means go for it. But if you're feeling good, then if it's not broke, don't fix it sometimes, but we can go through that. I just want to go into the chat real quick. I know we're running over, so anyone that needs to go, you can head out. I'm just going to scan through here and see if there's any questions in the chat I missed. Saddle stool, pain, good chair, adjustable, leaving tightness. The link is in the chat all the way up top. I can copy and paste it down there again. But you should be able to see that now. Right at the bottom now. I think I answered all your questions. Anyone else? Do I recommend the vertical runs? Oh, we talked about the vertical mouse, but no, I don't recommend the vertical mouse. I think semi-vertical is great. It's kind of the best of both. The vertical mouse tends to slide too much when you use it, and you'll end up gripping it more just to keep it steady, and that defeats the whole purpose. Not seeing the link. Let's see. There's the link. Sorry about that. So the link is down there, and yeah. So I want to thank you all for coming. If there's no other questions, I think we got them all. Thank you guys for coming. It has been great, and I hope this was helpful. You can check out ergosesh.com to see our process. If you're working with companies, we love getting into the companies and going one by one and trying to really just educate each person on a personal level and try to make a big impact in your company one by one. Or we also do these group sessions and ergo breaks. If you're having a digital conference, we can go and do these little talks in the middle of the conference that break it up with movement and get people moving, meditating. So have a great weekend coming up, and thanks for stopping by.